Hi guys, this is George back here with another video, and welcome to another countdown kind of video where today this is a follow-up to another episode where we're going to be looking at some of the world's weirdest roller coasters. Of course, you don't necessarily need height or speed or insane G-forces to be able to create an interesting roller coaster, and recently we have been seeing many more interesting coaster types, layouts. Of course, manufacturers are having to start to innovate a lot more to get the attention of the parks to come and be like, here's a look at our latest model, come and buy it for your park. So of course we have seen some very interesting layouts. So of course I did one of these episodes a few months ago and it seemed to go down pretty well, and I said that I would probably do a part 2 because there are so many different unique roller coasters out there that there are to talk about. So yeah, I'm going to do another list today. So yeah, there's a few different types of roller coasters that we're going to talk about today, some really interesting ones. I love a roller coaster that is unique, sometimes where it's just something a bit different. You just look at it and think, what the hell is that? Sometimes it just makes it really unique and it really adds to the experience. You don't necessarily need to be a really fast, a massive, insane thrill ride. To be something fun, just making it something, just making it unique is fun in itself, and that can be all you need for a coaster to make it stand out against others. So let's go and talk about the first one, which is going to be another coaster in the UK. We had a few of these in the last episode. So let's start by talking about Gold Rush at Drayton Manor, an Intamin lift and launch coaster that opened in 2024. And what makes this coaster so unique is the fact that it has two different settings. So at the start of the day you get setting 1, and then later on in the day it changes on to setting 2. So with this ride it has two different switch tracks which enable it to have the two different settings. So setting 1, you go up the lift hill, you then go down the drop, through the layout, and you then go into the launch area, that big dynamite shed where the launch is. You then launch backwards, and then a switch track takes you onto a new track which leads you back to the lift hill. You then start climbing back up the lift hill backwards. It then stops you at the top of the lift hill. You drop back down forwards, carry on through the bit that you've just done backwards, straight through the launch and into the final section of the ride. Setting 2 starts off by going up to the top of the lift hill where it stops at the top. You then drop down the lift hill backwards through another section of the ride which takes you into the dynamite shed. It stops you there. You then launch forwards and you go back through what you've just experienced backwards going forwards, up the lift hill, carry on going over the lift hill, down the drop, throughout the rest of the layout, straight through the launch and through into the final section of the ride. If that sounds complicated, then I don't blame you for being confused by that. It's a very confusing ride that confuses a lot of people. However, it is a great fun coaster. I've ridden it lots of times now. It's very smooth, very comfortable, and it's really fun having those two different settings. It makes it very re-rideable. Of course, you're going to want to ride it at the beginning of the day and also later on in the day as well. It keeps people wanting to come back, which makes it even more exciting. It's well themed, it's great fun, and hopefully we're going to see a lot more coasters with different settings like this. So now let's head over to the UAE and talk about Mission Ferrari, a one-of-its-kind ride system. And once I talk to you about this ride, it won't come as a surprise why. This roller coaster is very, very unreliable. If you go to Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi and this ride is open, run to it, because you never know how long it is going to remain open for. I've ridden this a couple of times and it is so much fun, and once you have ridden this ride you can see why it has so many problems. First of all, it was delayed opening by quite a few. I think it was under construction for about 7 years, which is nuts. It opened in 2023, I think it was the start of 2023. It was open for a few days, it then closed for the rest of 2023, and then it reopened again in 2024. Because I remember when I went for my first time, literally on New Year's Day 2024, I was expecting it to be closed because it hadn't reopened since after the first couple of weeks of operation. But then it was just randomly open. It said it was going to be closed on the website, but then it was just open and I ran to it, and I wasn't expecting to get on it that day, but I did, and it was an amazing experience. So this coaster is manufactured by Dynamic Attractions and it's an SFX coaster. There was another one of these that was supposed to be built. However, it has since been abandoned after the problems that this ride has had. I don't blame the park for not wanting to carry on building this. Also, I believe the manufacturer has gone bankrupt because of this ride as well. So yeah, this was a very expensive ride for Ferrari World and also Dynamic Attractions, but it's got some very unique elements to it. So you start off by going through a couple of dark ride sections. You then go into a launch, which launches you out of the building into an airtime hill, turns around into a corkscrew, and then the whole rest of this ride is in the dark. So then after the corkscrew, you raise up again, and it stops you for a little bit. You watch a show scene, it then drops you down, a very steep drop, and you go around a couple, like an S-bend. You then stop again and come to what is the most unique part of the ride, where it's a little bit like a seesaw. So it stops you, and you've got a 360 screen around you, and then this piece of track that you're on can move like a seesaw, so it tilts up and down while you're watching a screen. Realistically, it's only actually tilting forwards and backwards, but you feel like it's spinning as well. Like, it feels like it's going up and down and like around like that, and while you watch the screen as you're watching, it's going down and it feels like that, and it feels like it's got so much movement. It's very clever how it's done. And then eventually it slides up into an upwards position, it then locks, holds you there for a bit, drops you down backwards into a backwards loop, into a helix, where then it gets to what you think is the end of the ride, the fake ending, and it's like, well done, you escaped, you managed to succeed in the mission. But then like the bad guys come back and it's like, oh no, they're back again, and you've got to escape again. And then what happens really catches a lot of people off guard. You start sliding sideways and you drop down sideways. It starts up like that and then you just drop down like that, back over to the end of the ride, and that's when it really is the end of the ride, and then you go back into the station. It is so unique, so much fun. I do wish that more of these were built, however, obviously with this manufacturer going bankrupt after this, and also even if they didn't go bankrupt, I can see why no other parks would have any other interest in building one of these, because it certainly does have a lot of problems, and if you are one of the people that have got to ride it, then you are definitely very lucky. So let's talk about another family coaster now, and this is at Bayern Park in Germany. I've never visited this park, and it looks really nice. It looks like a beautiful little park. I'd love to go and visit at some point. It really is in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't really get that much attention because of its location, I'd imagine. But it actually looks like a really nice little park. And they have a Gerslauer family coaster there called Furius, I think it's called, something like that. And this ride is very different in terms of how it works as well. Kind of a similar situation to Gold Rush, where it's like you experience it multiple different times. However, it's like you get two settings both rides, because you start off doing the layout forwards and then you do it backwards. So you start off by launching out the station backwards into a spike. You then launch forwards out of the station. You go through just a normal family coaster section, but then there's a switch track. So the track switches and you end up going back into the station the same way that you came out, but you're still going forwards. You then launch through the station, up the spike again, but you're going forwards this time up the spike. You then roll back down the spike again, launch through the station backwards. You then go through the same section of coaster again that you've just experienced, however you're going backwards this time. And then the switch track switches again, so you come back into the station backwards, and that's the end of the ride. So yeah, it's really interesting. So it goes around a section forwards, so it starts off going forwards, and then you do the exact same layout again, but going backwards. You get to experience it forwards and backwards, which just sounds like so much fun. There aren't many roller coasters with switch tracks that make it so you do that, whereas normally you'd have like a switch track go up a spike, and then there'd be a switch track, and you'd go around a whole nother coaster section. But no, with this one, you go around the exact same layout twice, once forwards, once backwards, which is what makes it really unique. I haven't been on this ride. I'd love to go and ride it because it does look like so much fun. So now let's make our way over to Spain and PortAventura World and have a look at Furius Baco. This is an Intamin launched wing coaster. This is the only ride of its type that Intamin ever built, and to be honest, I can see why, because it might be a unique ride, however, it is very rough. It's got a reputation for being very rough, and I was there a couple weeks ago, and if you saw my vlog from there, I had a very painful ride on Furius Baco. But with this ride, it's very unique because it's got a hydraulic launch. With a wing coaster, you don't normally see hydraulic launches. Literally, normally Intamin would have just a standard sit-down hydraulic launch coaster, or it would be just a normal wing coaster, like you look at something like Flying Aces at Ferrari World. But no, this one combines the two together. So you start off by going into a show scene where you watch the pre-show. You then launch forwards into a very punchy launch. It reaches a speed of around 83 miles per hour, I believe. It's a very fast launch. You then dip down into like these trenches, which is really fun. It's like you're really close to a lot of the rock work there, and as much as it's very rough, it is really fun being on the wing seat, being really close to the rock work, going through these S-bends. It's not got the most interesting layout, however it is mainly the novelty of it being like a hydraulic launched wing coaster, and with it being the only ride that, of its type that Intamin ever built. You then have the one inversion on here, which comes towards the end of the ride, so you go through the inversion, which is a lot of fun actually. I do really like the inversion, and then it has the one final element after that where it swoops over the lake. A very iconic photo opportunity at this part where you see this coaster going over the lake and then it rises back up and into the brake run. It's a short ride, it only lasts for probably about 15-20 seconds, however I mean it is very rough, so you probably don't want it to last for much longer than that, but it is very unique. The launch is fantastic. When I first rode this I used to absolutely love it. I've always had a soft spot for it, and I always will do. No matter how rough it gets, I'll always have a soft spot for it, with it being at PortAventura, and PortAventura is such a happy place for me where I have so many childhood memories, and it turned me into the theme park enthusiast that I am today. And Furius Baco was one of the first like big coasters that I went on, so it'll always be special to me. It'll always be unique. However, it definitely is very rough, but if you haven't been on it, then I'd definitely recommend going on it. It is certainly an interesting experience. And the final coaster that I'm going to talk about in this video, and I say coaster, it's actually a coaster model because there were 3 of these built, and that is the S&S Screaming Squirrel. Now these are very interesting rides that unfortunately, I don't think there are any around anymore. I think there might be one left in operation, but I'm not 100% sure. So there were 3 of these built. One was in Italy, another was somewhere in Asia, I think. And then the other one, I think was in Russia. I'm not 100% sure. The one in Russia, if it was in Russia, very unique because it's kind of like an El Loco mixed with the Screaming Squirrel. It looks very unique, but the standard Screaming Squirrel, like let's look at Sequoia Adventure Gardaland because that's the one that I got to experience. So you start off by going up a lift hill, and then you go into what's called a saxophone element, which is very unique. It never builds up a lot of speed, but you go along this straight piece of track, it then flips you over and you do it again that way, and again that way, and again that way, and again that way. So it never builds up a lot of speed. However, it's certainly very different, and I have to say that literally it kind of feels like a dive coaster at first, where it starts off by tilting you forwards and you go into that vertical drop and it holds you there for a while, but rather than then dropping down, you just go back under yourself and carry on going straight along another piece of track, but upside down. The hang time was insane on this ride. It definitely wasn't for everyone. I heard very mixed reviews about this ride. I always quite enjoyed it. I had a few rides on it when I was at Gardaland, and I did quite enjoy it. However, you can see why that they never really caught on. They're quite low capacity. Very mixed reviews come from them. And they weren't the most reliable rides either. However, Sequoia Adventure, I did really like it at Gardaland, and of course you had the other 2 as well. The other one that I think was in Asia was the same layout as Sequoia Adventure, and then the other one, which was the most recent one, S&S built, that one looks really unique because it's not the standard layout. It's got like some really steep drops on there. It still never builds up the speed, but it's got a couple of drops, and then you go around some really sharp turns and then back down another drop where it then hangs you upside down for a bit and carry on going back down the drop. It certainly looks very unique, and I'm sure you've seen a video of it before. I'll see if I can find some footage of it, and of course if I do, then I'll credit all of the footage that I find that isn't my footage. Most of the footage I'll use in this video is my own. However, if I find anything that I can use that isn't my own, then I will credit it for either this coaster or the one in Bayern Park as well, because I don't have any of my own footage for that. But these S&S Screaming Squirrels were certainly very unique. Did you ever get to ride one? Let me know. Which one did you ride? Did you ever ride one of these? And let me know what you thought of them, because yeah, they were definitely very polarizing rides. So that's now the end of this video here. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at George Kelly and follow me on Twitter at George Kelly. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe everyone, and I will see you all later. Bye.